You've never faced anything like this. Let them come.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another Backlot Banter movie review. My name is Tucker Hayes. Of course, I am joined by my co-host who has more to him than meets the eye. That, of course, is Tanner Dykstra, and today we're here to talk about the latest entry in the Transformers saga. Transformers Rise of the Beast with Stephen Cable Jr. in the directing chair. You got Anthony Ramos. You got, oh god, what's her name?
Dominique Fishback.
Dominique Fishback, yes. In the acting chair.
Liza Koshy.
Yeah. Michelle Yeoh.
Peter Cullen, Michelle Yeoh, Ron
Peter
Perlman,
Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage. A
Crazy
star-studded cast. Yeah.
And Tanner, we have both seen this movie. We've
Yes.
both seen every Transformers movie as we watched them
Indeed.
all last year. And this adds to that legacy. But I'm going to go on a limb and say it doesn't add much. And we're here to tell you why.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk to us, maybe argue with us. If you loved Rise of the Beast.
It seems like a lot of people do. Yeah.
Join our Discord. That link is in the description. And while you're down there, like this video. Whether you like the movie or not, like the video. I mean, come on, man. Come on. We're
at us.
hard-working men.
Look at us.
We're out. We're sweating in the fields, making
Yeah.
YouTube videos. We deserve a
Harvesting
little
that
work.
hot, fresh YouTube content and
Yeah.
serving it up to you. And would you
Tanner?
put us to shame for that? You wouldn't.
I wouldn't. Certainly. I
Okay,
wouldn't.
okay.
But Tanner,
Yes.
you have seen Transformers Rise of the Beast. Unfortunately, we're not able to experience this theatrical experience together.
Sadly.
Give me your thoughts on Transformers Rise of the Beast.
So going into Transformers Rise of the Beast, I don't know, middling. It really seemed as like we see everything in theaters, so I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
new Transformers movie coming out, gotta go see it. Didn't have a good time. Don't think this is a good movie. Actually, I take that back. I kind of had a good time because I think this movie is laughably bad in some
Sure.
ways.
Sure. We'll get into
I think
that.
particularly the writing, the screenplay is pretty laughably bad. But I'm not going to say that it didn't have its moments, particularly one moment towards the end that, I don't want to spoil or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, not a good movie and not a promising entry in the Transformers franchise, which hasn't, well, I guess Bumblebee was a promising entry.
Yes.
And this is like technically a sequel to that. But in really no way, shape, or form, because it lacks all of the heart and like personality of Bumblebee,
Yes.
and kind of just tries to find a middle ground between that and the Bayformers, and this
Yeah.
does not have the juice of a Bayformers.
No, it absolutely doesn't. And that is going to be the crux of my discussion here,
Yeah.
my review, because I think this is also a bad movie. And frankly, I think, even though there's some really bad Bayformer movies,
Yeah.
I think that this is better than the worst Bayformers, but worse than most of them, because I think it lacks a distinct kind of personality. And it feels like, to me, this is Transformers, if Transformers was like every other middling action franchise.
Yeah,
It has
yeah.
none of its own identity in terms of a sense of humor, a sense of spectacle. It's just doing what all action movies do.
Yep.
It is a totally fine produced in terms of the visuals and the VFX and, big cast
Yeah.
and entry in a big franchise. But it's filler. It's fluff. It just fills the cracks of, God, we need another one of these fucking movies about action figures, don't we? And
Tucker, we need to
because
set up some big things
Yes.
big things coming in the future. We'll see if
Maybe.
let those materialize.
And we'll talk about those at the end once
Yeah.
we've given our scores in our spoiler section.
Yeah.
But there's also not too much spoil here, because I think what they have established, even though apparently they're supposed to be doing a trilogy, Rise of the Beast trilogy.
Ooh, okay.
I don't think this movie really has anything to stand on its own. I mean, it's what it introduces is the Maximals and our two human characters.
Yep.
And nothing here feels of any consequence. It's just CGI characters and boring humans, and they got a goober to go after. And
Yeah.
that's it. It's just an action movie with nothing of its own to stand on.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the main point. I think you're right, Tucker, is that there's nothing special about Transformers Rise of the Beast. Say what you will, and I think that there's a reevaluation of the Michael Bay Transformers movies, at least that first trilogy happening.
Yeah.
Because we're 10 odd years on from those movies now, and the VFX still hold up in a lot of ways.
Yes, oh, absolutely they do.
You actually see like the transformation happening with the Autobots and the Decepticons. Like the parts are all moving individually, and like even that core bit of this is a Transformers movie. You want to see these robots turn into cars, and then vice versa. it's just not interesting anymore. Like, a lot of times they'll hide it behind things,
Yes.
or they'll just jump up in the air and whoosh
Turn to a
around
blob, yeah.
and turn into a blob. Like, there's none of the tactileness that was in those Bay stuff. And I don't know if it's fair to compare these like to the Michael Bay stuff, because he is like, as much as a lot of people would hate to say it, an auteur when it
I
comes
absolutely
to
think so.
when it comes to American blockbuster making. And Stephen Caple Jr. made Creed 2.
Yes. That's basically it.
Yeah.
And I do think that lack of directorial hand is really what steers this one from being anything special. Is there's no directorial flavor. There's no, this kind of color grading, or this kind of shot, or this sense of humor, or this sense of spectacle that Michael Bay had in droves. You watch a Michael Bay movie, and okay, yeah, maybe it's a little too yellow, and maybe there's helicopter shots and American
maybe we're
flags
leering
and,
at women a little bit too much.
Yes, which is the element I would certainly leave from those movies, but crude humor, crazy spectacle, overcomplicated, those are things that modern action filmmaking has steered away from, because frankly, lots of people don't like Michael Bay, and that is certainly a valid opinion to hold, but he brought a flavor to those films and made them what they were, and Stephen Caple Jr. doesn't have any of that. And I think it's unfortunate to levy a very flat film visually and thematically and writing-wise on a cast that's pretty damn good, but none of them stick in my mind in any particular way outside of very key moments.
Yeah, I mean, Tucker, you don't remember the classic character Noah Diaz and all that he stood for, all
He's
his
got a
classic
brother.
moments? That's true. His brother, him and his brother call each other like Sonic and Tails.
They
you know,
which is funny because it's another Paramount franchise.
Yes. And on that note, I want to talk about the nerd culture of it all. Okay.
Yeah.
Because as we were, this leads from our conversation briefly just on Michael Bay. Because say what you will about those Michael Bay Transformers movies, we watched them last summer, had a great time watching them. There's also a sense that Michael Bay doesn't care about like the lore of Transformers or like the other planets and all of them. Like, there's people who knew that stuff and told Michael Bay, and he's like, that one, and that one can be in this movie, and we'll make them look badass. But I think there's so much like reverence given to the Transformers lore now, especially in this movie, where we're steering away from the spectacle and steering more into, hey, we're doing the things. We're doing Unicron. Isn't Unicron cool? Transformers fans, you know,
Could have told me that
Unicron.
was in one of the other movies, and I would have believed you.
Yeah. We're doing the Maximals. Isn't that cool? Like, we're so focused on having this IP stuff in there that we're not worried about making it cool or impactful.
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I think nowhere is that more apparent than the Maximals themselves, which are, I think, just worse Transformers, because ultimately they just end up being large robotic animals for 90% of the time they're on screen. They don't even they don't even maximize into their humanoid forms until the final battle, and that makes them kind of just less interesting.
Exactly.
They're not transforming very often,
Yeah.
and they don't have particularly distinct personalities. There's only 4 of them, 2 of them of any import, and 2 that are just like filler for the fodder of the background.
Yeah.
And the relationship and the way that they're intertwined to the plot is so weak and milquetoast that I don't care to learn about these characters more. I think something is maybe interesting set up at the beginning as they are escaping from their planet and hiding a key, and they're worried about maybe getting back to their home planet because that might lead Unicron to where they were. It's a whole fucking thing. And then where we get so focused on Optimus Prime again and his 2 human lackeys who don't have particularly strong personalities.
Yeah.
That and Optimus Prime's whole host of other little Transformers guys who are basically all new except for Bumblebee and don't have like that much interesting about them and also feel like filler. That everything ends up like bumping against one another, and we'd be like, sure. I mean, I guess I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about the human characters, because we talked about the Transformers a little bit. Let's talk about Noah Diaz and Dominique Fishback's character.
Yeah, I'll get our name real quick.
Because I like both of them as actors.
So
I
do
liked
I, so
Anthony
do I.
Ramos in The Heights last year. I haven't seen
Yes.
Hamilton, but I'm sure he's great in that. Dominique Fishback was, of course, fantastic
Elena.
thank you. In Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yes, she was.
But here, we're just kind of we're just going through the motions. Like you can take any facet of this film and just say like we're painting by numbers for a modern action film. And it's apparent in the human characters. Like so Noah's deal is that he
doesn't work well with others. But that's not particularly apparent.
He needs to prove himself to himself. He needs to
hard to tell. Hard to tell. There's so many moments where when they're setting up these characters, you feel like they're leading towards, okay, this is what this character's arc is going to be. But because it gets so muddied by intersecting with Transformers and Maximals and Goober plot and action sequences that it's very hard to tell what they're actually going for with these characters. And their personality is swept up in, oh god, I gotta run because the shit is blowing up behind me and a giant fucking mechanical creature is chasing after me.
Yeah.
That I kind of lost track of why are they in South America? Why did they end up here? Why did they met in a weird way and then they got swept up in it and they don't really know each other, but they kind of become friends and it happens so fast and they don't like Optimus Prime and then they do like Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
There's so much going on, but none of it is interesting, frankly.
No.
And I lost track of the plot and the character arcs. So by the end, I'm like, Elena knows archaeology, and Noah is his confidence.
Yes,
he's kind of leader. Maybe.
Yeah, he's becoming a leader, and he's gonna be our main character in the apparent trilogy of Transformers: Rise of the Beast movies that they're making. I mean, it's also like I mentioned the screenplay. And that's an element of it, of course, too, like an overarching issue with it. But also just moment-to-moment stuff. And this goes with casting as well. We listed off a whole bunch of people at the beginning of the video who are in this thing. The worst offenders to me are Pete Davidson as Mirage and Liza Koshy as RC.
Okay.
And I just think that we're doing celebrity stunt casting for the voice cast here.
Yes.
And they're just not good. Like they're just super annoying, and they're trying to be like cracking jokes and cracking wise and stuff like that. But I'm just annoyed the whole time. Like Pete Davidson has a very specific brand. Like he's kind of this couldn't give a fuck kind of dude. And when you ask him to do like these, haha, I'm a jokey guy. Would you like to buy an action figure of me? Ho ho. I'm like, this feels so disingenuous to Pete Davidson as like an actor, you know, he kind of just plays himself in a lot of things, but it does feel disingenuous. And Liza Koshy is like a YouTuber who's just not accustomed to this doing this kind of thing.
I don't know who she is.
Okay, she's a YouTuber. But anyway, and there's also just lame ass jokes like the Marky Mark reference. Like, get it? Mark Wahlberg was in the last two movies. I'm like, yeah, good point. Yeah, he was. Yeah, and that's another one of like the pop culture reverence for the Transformers stuff that I was talking about that just doesn't mesh well with this movie and sticks out to me and just rubs me the wrong way when I'm watching this thing.
Yeah, it's also a movie that I think feels out of time in what it's trying to go for, because they chose to set this in the 90s, which is in the middle of where Bumblebee was in the 80s, which I think was able to strike a very confident tone in the character that it set up with Haley Steinfeld and the way that she was interacting with Bumblebee and bonding together through music being on the radio, that being the only way he could talk, and the set design of her house and stuff, which gave it a very distinct flavor. But between the 80s where Bumblebee was and the 2000s/2010s where all the rest of them were, this lands in a middle ground where they feel like they're shoving you down your throat so many, hey, this is the 90s references. We're going to play pop song in the final action sequence, and they're going to be referencing video games a bunch. And remember, it's set in the 90s, but it doesn't have any real material impact on the culture of the film or the characters.
We see the OJ trial. That was fucking crazy. But yeah, there's just so many, like, there's a lot of ham-fisted, like, hey, it's the 90s stuff. And listen, I'm gonna forgive the soundtrack because they're playing a lot of good 90s hip-hop. You know, I gotta respect it. The moment that you mentioned, Tucker, is actually one of the moments where I'm like, that's a cool scene. I dig it. And it meshes well with Bumblebee as a character who they seem to flip-flop back and forth on, like, okay, does he talk in, like, song lyrics, or can he just pull from, like, movies?
Yeah, it's very unclear. And I think that Bumblebee was a character in the other movies, in the first, 5 movies. Yep. But, you know, he was a side character. He was kind of funny. Oh, it's the guy, you know, from the TV show. Whatever. And then they made a movie about him, where
Yep.
he gained his own distinct personality and dynamic with Haley Steinfeld, and he felt way more personable than any Transformer had up to that point. And then they bring him back here, and it's the same Bumblebee, supposed to be the same Bumblebee from the 80s, from Bumblebee's own movie,
Yep.
but none of that is retained. And then he's sort of halfway between the 80s thing and what he ends up being, which I guess maybe makes sense timeline-wise, but he's so underutilized here that I never feel like you include him because he's a face that people recognize and not for really anything else.
Also, Tucker, I don't know if this factors into what you were saying at all, but like, this is in a different continuity than the Michael Bay Transformers films.
It's supposed to be maybe lightly in.
I think it's.
I don't honestly. I have no fucking
because
clue, man.
Unicron at the end of 5, it is revealed that Unicron is Earth.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
Unicron is a completely different planet in this one, obviously.
Okay.
So I think they're supposed to be different. Also, at the beginning of the first Transformers movies is when the Transformers come to Earth.
Yeah,
but also in
earlier
5, they were on there during like World War II. So, Doug, I don't think there's a cohesive timeline in the Transformers franchise, and I want to get to where it's gonna go. So, do we have any last spoiler-free thoughts that we want to share before we give a score here?
Don't see it. Honestly, I think don't support this movie. I think that it's such a filler, nothing action blockbuster that frankly feels out of time with the quality of blockbusters we've been getting from all sorts of studios now.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, Fast X and this are the ones that feel the most like, God, this could have come out, 15 years ago, and I would have blunk twice. But
Blunk.
we got Creed 3 and John Wick 4 and Across the Spider-Verse and Guardians 3 and Mario, and we're like, oh shit, whoa.
Hey, you gotta sneak in there, but okay.
This feels like Transformers Last Night. It feels like Age of Extinction. It's like, we're just putting it out to continue have another big splashy thing out,
but in
put a lot
worse
of money into it.
in a lot of ways. We talked about the directorial hand behind this. It's I don't like 4 and 5
those are bad.
of the Bay ones, but there's still something to them. You can still laugh along at it. And like I said, I was laughing along at moments at this as well. Mostly whenever they said the trans warp key, you must get the trans warp key. The trans warp key. That's only half of the trans warp key.
Yeah.
Anyway,
God.
3.5 out of 10.
Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna go to the exact same. There's no division necessary here. 3.5 out of 10. Movie sucks.
Movie's
Honestly.
bad.
I was dipping in and out of consciousness the entire time.
Yeah. Okay. Spoilers, big thing. I'm sure people who have seen it were they don't care. But anyway, we're doing G.I. Joe. We're doing G.I. Joe.
Crossover?
We're doing a G.I. Joe crossover.
But does it really matter?
I remember years ago now they were talking about doing this, about doing a Transformers G.I. Joe crossover. And it seems like such a weird time to do this when we're transitioning out of like Michael Bay being the Transformers director and like the one-off of Bumblebee, and we're like now we're doing this like half-hearted start into a new series of films, and we're immediately doing a crossover.
Yeah, it's not even like this world is established.
Yeah.
And, oh my God, I know these characters so well, and it's going to be interesting to see how they mesh with the hypothetically already established G.I. Joe franchise that's been going for a couple films, and those cool characters are going to meet these cool characters, and their worlds are going to intertwine, and the lore's going to become crazy. I don't even know, like, is this continuing from Snake Eyes? Is it continuing from the G.I. Joe movies
G.I.
that they
Joe
made in the
and G.I.
2000s?
Joe Retaliation. I don't know.
What does this mean? It seems like it's just a government organization. Is he a G.I. Joe character that I maybe could have heard
here's the thing. The suit that he gets, the man former
Christ.
suit.
Oh my God.
Where
The
it's
Power Rangers looking
it's
fucking thing.
definitely his real face in there.
Well, actually, that suit is emblematic of a problem this movie has.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's a problem of all the Transformers movies.
Yeah.
Is what is the human characters have no business being where they are.
That's what a lot of people say. Is that I don't want a Transformers movies with human side characters. I want just Transformers. And that would be fine if I didn't think the Transformers alone were just pretty boring, actually. And we'll see what happens, how Transformers 1 coming out next year fits in with all of this.
Oh, that's
the
true.
animated one with Chris Hemsworth. If that is that going to be part of the G.I. Joe Transformers timeline? Who's to say? Is that going to be a prequel to the current run of Transformers films? Who's to say? It's such a mess.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else to say. It seems like a bad idea. This film seems to be doing solidly at the box office for what the modern, for what 2023 okay at the box office is.
Sure.
It made like $60 million this weekend, so I don't know. It probably won't do well in weeks following because, you got stuff like The Flash coming out.
Yeah.
And Indiana Jones, so...
This is going to be swept to the wayside, and I think that's okay.
Yeah. Best of luck.
I'm sorry I gave my $12 to this movie.
Best of luck to everyone involved. Maybe try and, I don't know, do another G.I. Joe movie. See how that turns out.
Yep. Well, thank you for joining me, Tanner. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Leave your thoughts on the G.I. Joe thing in the comments, I guess.
Yeah.
It's the funny thing, as soon as I left this movie, I sent my friends one text.
Yeah.
I said, there is one moment of any importance in this movie, and it's the last two words before
G.I. Joe.
we cut to credits.
Yeah.
G.I. Joe. And nothing else in this fucking movie matters.
Yeah.
God.
Does that even matter, Tucker? I'm going to stick it right here. They're not making that movie. It's not happening.
Bizarre.
Not going to happen.
Well, we'll see, and we will review that hypothetical movie if it hypothetically comes out in Minecraft.
Yeah.
And we'll see you guys when that happens.
Tanformers.
Yeah, we got it.
More than meets the eye. Tanformers. What's the rest of the song?